Good afternoon, and welcome to the Westminster Gretchen Iben Concert Series. And today we are welcoming the Peoria Baroque players. We would like to invite you also to join us on Sunday morning worship here at the sanctuary at 10:30 a.m. for beautiful music from our organ and our choir. Please note in the back of your program today all the upcoming events for the Gretchen Iben series. Join us after today's concert downstairs in the parlor for some refreshments. Enjoy.
So good afternoon. It is wonderful to be here with you, sharing a lovely Sunday and also enjoying some wonderful Baroque music. So my name is Apollo Lee, and I'm the trumpet player. Blake asked me to talk a little bit about my instrument because this is quite unusual. So I'm sure that you're very familiar with the modern trumpet, which typically have valve. But for this one, we don't have, because this is actually a replica of the trumpet that back in the day. For the valve, that actually didn't exist until 1815. So before that, it's all about something similar to this. But one thing that I think is a fun fact to know, do you know trumpets actually exist many, many years? In fact, you can find one of those instruments in Tutankhamun's tomb. So King Tut, tomb. So this instrument actually have more than 3,000 years history. One interesting thing about this instrument, you're probably thinking about, wait a minute, Apollo, there's no valve, how can you change notes? Well, we have to use our lips. We have to just kind of let go, basically use our lips to change notes, especially when we get to the higher register, the notes get a lot closer, then we finally be able to play a scale, and that's why we can play music, melody. So that register is called Carino register. So I hope you enjoy the piece that we're going to play for you, a sonata by Viviani.
I'm going to take a minute to talk about my instrument too, because then I'll be done talking and you can just enjoy the music. So I'm playing two different instruments in this concert for you this afternoon. The first that I'm holding right now is a viola da gamba, and it's a family of instruments, of string instruments, that was evolving at a similar time period to the violin family, which is one you're probably more familiar with. Iconography dates, both families of instruments were in existence by the late 1500s. There were ancestors to both instruments before that. But the viola da gamba starts appearing in its kind of permanent form by that period. And it's very distinct from the violin family for a couple of reasons. For one thing, it's tuned in fourths rather than in fifths, although this one has a third in the middle. So fourths with a third in the middle, in case it's not confusing enough. It also this gamba has 7 strings. They're typically 6 or 7 strings, only in the bass. This is the largest of the instruments. They also make tenor and treble viola da gambas, just like we have violin, viola, and cello in the violin family. You'll also notice that it has frets. So it's a little bit more like a guitar or a lute in that regard, because the only control I have over the intonation on this instrument is making sure that my strings and my frets are as in tune as possible before we start. And then it's just all luck from there. The other thing that's kind of unique about the viola da gamba compared to the violin family is that we actually hold the bow underhand. So you may have seen some double bass players play with what we call a German bow hold, which is an underhand bow hold like this, so you're kind of pulling the bow towards you. And the reason for that is that the double bass is actually a hybrid instrument. It's kind of a cross between the violin family and the viola da gamba family, which is why it's tuned in fourths and why it has these sloping shoulders like the instrument that you see right now. So I'm going to take a minute to tune my 7 strings, and then you can enjoy the Viviani.
Afternoon. I wanted to share with you that I'm going to be playing two different recorders today, so I wanted to give you that heads up. For this piece, I am playing, they are both alto recorders or treble recorders as listed in your program, and this is made by the Von Huna Workshop, which is just outside of Boston, and it's a copy after the London family of recorder makers, Stainsby. So there was a Stainsby Senior, and this is a Stainsby Junior. And they were very widely known, well-respected family of producers. And I chose this recorder today because I feel that this is kind of an intimate, warm sound that will match very beautifully with the viola da gamba. And later in the program, you will hear kind of the foil to that, and I will explain that later.
while we get prepared to play the next piece on the program, a piece, a little sonata by Johann Pepusch, I thought I'd say a little something about the oboe. Many of you may be familiar with the modern oboe, and the obvious difference is that the modern oboe has a whole lot more keys than its early counterpart. This instrument that I'm holding in my hand is a copy of an instrument that was made roughly at the beginning of the 18th century, around 1700, by the maker Denner. And it's just a couple things about the development of the oboe. Many people don't realize that really the double reed instrument that was really popular in the Middle Ages was the bagpipes. And it wasn't until the Crusaders started coming back from the Crusades and bringing with them these Janissary shawms that all of a sudden instrument makers thought, hey, this is pretty cool. You can make a lot of noise with these things. And so they started making sort of a European version of the Janissary shawm. And the shawms became very, very popular. And in the Renaissance, they made them in multiple sizes, soprano, alto, tenor, bass. And the thing about them was that they made a lot of noise. You could make a lot of sound. They would use them in the castle watch because, you know, you could tell the whole town, give it with a message with the shawm. Well, when we get to the beginning of the 1600s, there was a real change in the way music was being written, especially for the court. And it's really Jean-Baptiste Lully who introduces the oboe. Well, there was a desire to have these instruments play in court, but they couldn't have that noisy, loud shawm. So they started taking the shawm and making the bore smaller, which immediately made it softer. And if I had a shawm here, this is a much smaller instrument, and it is a much softer instrument. And it was Lully that then introduced the oboe into the French court of Louis XIV. The other thing is that the oboe was used as the military band instrument. Military bands in the military for Louis XIV consisted of oboes and bassoons and drums. So when you hear kids complaining, you know, oboe players never march. Well, that wasn't true in the 17th century. They did march. Anyway, so as time went on, the biggest change that was probably, aside from the keys, the adding of the keys, was the wood. This instrument's made out of boxwood. Nowadays, if I had my modern oboe here, it's black. It's made out of African hardwood. And the difference is that this instrument's a lot softer. Modern oboe, I can make a lot more sound with the modern oboe. And I'll turn this over to our bassoonist.
And here it is, the bassoon. Very different than the modern bassoon that you see on the stage of the orchestra when you go to concerts. That instrument is much heavier, it's larger. That instrument has 24 keys. This one has 5 keys. The one thing that they have in common, the newer bassoon and the old bassoon, is the reed. And Blake didn't mention anything about reeds, but it's a double reed. That's the sound of the double reed. And the other thing that's interesting, in other words, 2 pieces of cane that are bound together, in my case, by wires. But we make them ourselves. So, you know, these other fine people can sit and practice all day long. But we can't do that. We can't do a thing unless we've got reeds. And so we're busy doing this, reed making. And also, the reed itself, for the Baroque bassoon, is about 1.5 times the size of the modern reed. So I'm dealing, if I'm playing a modern instrument, with something quite different than this. One more thing, this instrument is a copy. It's a copy pretty much of Eikentopf. Johann Eikentopf was the maker of oboes, of bassoons, of transverse flutes that with all due respect to recorders, the transverse flute was just beginning to be played and coming into its own right around the beginning of the 18th century. Eichentoff was making them. So this is a valuable copy of one of his instruments. And I think I'll leave it at that, and I hope you will enjoy the sound of the double reeds.
So the recorder that I'm playing for this Telemann and the last piece, the Loyer, this was made in Holland by a pair of makers, Ricardo Kanji and Jacqueline Sorel. And this is a copy of the Denner, just like Blake's oboe. And the Denner, I read that Telemann might have had, they were contemporaries, Jacob Denner and Telemann, and that Telemann may have had one of these recorders. And Denner is known, his instruments, his recorders are known for really the exuberance of the high register, but also quite a nice low register as well. And sometimes you don't always have that. Sometimes you have to sacrifice one over the other. So Denner was known for that. And also, I think that the Denner model is a little bit more assertive in sound, and so it gives me a fighting chance with the double reeds.
as we get set up for our last piece, I just want to make a comment about the trio sonata. We played 2 trio sonatas, and then there was 1 trio. The 1 trio was obvious: harpsichord, recorder, and gamba, 3 instruments. But you might notice that at least for this trio sonata that we're doing by the transplanted Belgian composer who worked in England, John Loyer, we have 5 players playing a trio sonata. Now, how is that? Well, because it's about the way the piece was published. There are 3 lines. There's a treble 1, a treble 2, and a continuo part, which includes the bass line and all the chords. So that was normally played by at least 2 players, either a harpsichord and a cello, or a harpsichord and a bassoon. And in our case, and at this point, we're going to use both bassoon, cello, and harpsichord, which gives us the trio sonata. Trio sonatas were very, very popular. Thousands upon thousands of them were written and published. They were a real bonanza for publishing companies. Everybody wanted to have the latest book of trio sonatas for violins or flutes or recorders or oboes or combinations of those. And of course, the printers always said, this could be played by any of those instruments. And that way you get to buy, they'd sell a whole lot more than if they just said, these are for oboe. So I hope you enjoy it. Thank you for coming.